The alarm clock on the nightstand did not ring. It shattered under the pressure of 5 tons per square inch. Tal stared down at the plastic crumbs and tangled copper wiring clinging to his palm, sighing softly as the morning sun broke through the blinds of his small apartment. It was the 3rd clock this month. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, feeling the microscopic vibrations of the city outside, the hum of distant traffic, the rhythm of a million heartbeats, the subtle, terrifying weight of a world that desperately needed saving. Tal did not choose to be what he was. He simply woke up one day to a world made of glass, where a single careless step could crack a sidewalk and a sneeze could derail a train. For years, he lived in the shadows, masking his impossible strength behind a curtain of ordinary routines. But his dreams were always the same, a vision of a planet spinning in perfect harmony, free from hunger, fear, and malice. He wanted to be a beacon. He wanted to be the force that finally made the world function exactly as it should. Across town, the air inside the abandoned warehouse smelled of damp earth and rot. Julian Horbo strapped himself into the rusted medical chair, his hands shaking so violently he could barely hold the syringe. For months, he had been nothing but a number, a disposable test subject for a mad scientist who promised to cure his failing lungs, but instead left him to decay. The scientist was gone now, fled from the authorities, leaving behind a laboratory filled with glowing failures. Julian looked at the vial of thick, luminescent green fluid in his hand. He had nothing left to lose. He plunged the needle into his jugular. The transformation was silent but agonizing. Julian's skin bubbled, turning a deep, sickly emerald. His bones expanded, thickening until his posture resembled that of an obese man, though his mass was dense and heavy, built entirely of fungal spores and compacted mold. He roared, but the sound was muffled, wet and thick. He was no longer Julian. He was the mold monster, an avatar of decay, capable of secreting walls of toxic fungus that could trap, suffocate, and consume anything in their path. He smashed through the concrete floor, disappearing into the subterranean shadows of the city, driven by a singular, suffocating hatred for the society that had discarded him. It was a crisp Thursday afternoon when Tal's life shifted on its axis. He was patrolling the upper atmosphere, floating invisibly against the blue sky, when his super hearing picked up a high-pitched shatter of glass, followed by a scream that cut through the city's white noise. On the roof of the central bank, a low-level crook, desperate and panicked after a botched heist, lunged at a civilian who had blocked his exit. The civilian was a young woman named Eden Hallow. With a cruel shove, the criminal sent her over the ledge. Eden felt the air rush past her ears, the street below spinning into focus with terrifying speed. She closed her eyes, waiting for the impact. But the impact never came. Instead, a pair of arms, solid as steel but wrapped in a gentle warmth, caught her mid-air. The sudden deceleration should have broken her spine, but Tal managed his kinetic energy perfectly, absorbing the shock into his own body. He floated down to a nearby park, setting her feet gently onto the grass. Eden blinked, looking up into the eyes of her savior. Tal expected her to run, to scream at the sight of a flying man. Instead, she breathed out a sigh of relief, and as her bare feet touched the soil, something extraordinary happened. The withered rose bushes in the park garden suddenly burst into vibrant crimson bloom. Dandelions sprouted through the cracks in the pavement, their yellow heads turning toward her. Tal stared at the plants, then back at her. "You did that," he whispered. Eden smiled, a small, knowing expression. "Nature reacts when I am frightened, or when I am grateful." In that moment, a bond was forged that neither could break. In the weeks that followed, they became inseparable. Tal showed her the world from the clouds. Eden showed him the intricate, beautiful life hidden in the dirt. She wasn't just a civilian to protect. She was the deuteragonist of his life, a woman who controlled the very life force of the earth. Together, they believed they could truly make the world a better place. But beneath the earth, and high above in the halls of power, a dark alliance was forming. Deep within a cavernous sanctuary beneath the capital sat King Hel. He was a creature of pure nightmare, a towering, demonic humanoid supervillain whose skin was the color of dried blood, carved with ancient, glowing runes. His eyes were horizontal slits of blinding, white-hot energy, capable of discharging destructive laser beams that could melt titanium in seconds. King Hel did not care for wealth or political power. His goal was absolute, apocalyptic. He intended to sacrifice every human soul on Earth to the devil below, turning the planet into a barren, screaming graveyard. To achieve this, he needed time, and he needed to dismantle the superhuman society that Tal was trying so hard to build. King Hel understood human nature perfectly. He knew that fear was a far more powerful weapon than any laser beam. He arranged a secret meeting in the shadows of a secure government bunker with Director Vance of the FBI, a man obsessed with maintaining human dominance over the growing population of super-powered individuals. "The people trust them too much, Vance," King Hel rumbled, his voice like grinding tectonic plates. "Let me help you change their minds." Together, they initiated a massive, calculated smear campaign. King Hel utilized his underground syndicates to stage elaborate attacks, making it appear as though the superhero society was attempting a global coup. The FBI fed manipulated footage to the media. Overnight, public opinion shifted. The heroes who had once been cheered on the streets were now viewed with suspicion and terror. King Hel's popularity soared among the fearful masses. He presented himself as a savior, a strong man willing to do what was necessary. He cultivated an army of fanatical followers, turning the world into his own personal fan club, all while secretly constructing a doomsday weapon in the desert. The architect of that weapon was none other than President Tony Sullivan. President Sullivan was a man driven by a desperate, pathetic desire for survival. He knew about King Hel's true nature, and he had secretly funded the construction of the Oblivion Engine, a massive orbital satellite weapon. Sullivan believed that by helping Hel build the machine, he could negotiate his own safety. He wanted to be the last man standing, a king of ashes. One evening, in the Oval Office, Sullivan sat across from the demonic villain, pouring 2 glasses of scotch with trembling hands. "The project is complete, Your Excellency," Sullivan said, a sycophantic smile on his face. "As we agreed, my bunker is fully stocked. When you activate the engine and clear the Earth, I will assume leadership of the new world." King Hel looked at the president, his evil eyes glowing with a faint, mocking light. "You really believed you were an equal in this, Tony?" "What?" Sullivan gasped. Before the president could move, twin beams of blinding energy erupted from King Hel's eyes. The lasers cut through Sullivan's chest instantly, leaving nothing but scorched fabric and ash. King Hel took the glass of scotch from the dead man's desk, took a sip, and shattered it on the floor. "You were merely a pawn," he muttered to the empty room. The next morning, the news reported that President Sullivan had been assassinated by a rogue faction of superheroes. The country descended into chaos. Vice President Evelyn Ross was immediately sworn into office. Unlike Sullivan, Ross was a woman of fierce integrity and sharp intellect. She reviewed the classified files left behind in the Oval Office and quickly realized the horrifying truth. Sullivan had been compromised, the FBI was working with a demon, and the superhero society had been entirely framed. She reached out through secure, encrypted channels, bypassing her own compromised intelligence agencies, and called for a secret meeting with Tal and Eden in a secluded forest cabin. "The world is on the brink of total annihilation," President Ross said, looking into Tal's eyes. "My predecessor built a weapon that can wipe out humanity, and King Hel has the trigger. The FBI is compromised from the top down. I need your help, Tal. The United States wants to make an official pact with you." Tal looked at Eden, who nodded, her hand resting on a small seedling that grew rapidly through the floorboards, wrapping around the president's hand in a gesture of solidarity. "We will stop him, Madam President," Tal said firmly. "But we have to act fast." The climax began on a stormy night at the high-security military base in the Nevada desert, where the control console for the Oblivion engine was housed. As Tal, Eden, and a loyal faction of superhuman allies breached the perimeter, the ground shook. From the darkness rose the mold monster, unleashed by King Hel as a defensive vanguard. Julian's mutated form was grotesque, dripping with toxic green slime. With a wet roar, he slammed his fists into the earth, and a massive 30-foot wall of dense, suffocating mold erupted from the sand, cutting Tal off from Eden and the rest of the team. "Go!" Eden shouted to Tal. "I'll handle the garden variety." Eden stepped forward, her eyes glowing with an emerald light that matched the Earth's core. She pressed her hands into the desert sand. "Awake," she whispered. Instantly, massive, ancient root systems tore through the desert floor. Giant, thorny vines erupted from the earth, wrapping around the mold monster's fungal walls, tearing them to pieces. The mold monster lunged at her, secreting a cloud of lethal spores. But Eden commanded a gust of wind to blow the toxins back, while her vines pinned the monster to the ground, binding him so tightly that he could no longer manipulate the surrounding flora. Julian roared in frustration, but he was entirely neutralized by the sheer majesty of nature's wrath. Meanwhile, Tal flew directly into the main hangar, tearing the reinforced steel doors open like wet tissue paper. Inside stood King Hel, his hand hovering over the activation sequence of the Oblivion engine's console. The air around him shimmered with intense, demonic heat. "You're too late, superhero," King Hel mocked, his voice echoing in the vaulted ceiling. "The human race is eager for its own destruction. They cheered for me while they cursed you. They deserve to be fed to the abyss." "They were deceived by a monster," Tal said, floating an inch above the ground, his cape billowing behind him. "But their dreams are still worth saving." King Hel unleashed his full fury. Twin pillars of catastrophic laser energy erupted from his evil eyes, striking Tal squarely in the chest. The force of the impact drove Tal backward through 3 concrete walls, the heat singing his skin and threatening to burn through his chest plate. It was a level of pain Tal had never experienced before. He could feel the raw, demonic malice behind the attack, trying to dissolve his very soul. But Tal thought of the shattered alarm clock, the quiet mornings, the vibrant roses that bloomed at Eden's touch, and the millions of innocent people sleeping peacefully in their beds, completely unaware of the abyss staring down at them. He dug his boots into the floor, stopping his momentum. With a roar that shattered every piece of glass in a 5-mile radius, Tal flew forward, cutting through the laser beams with his bare hands. He closed the distance in a microsecond, grabbing King Hel by his demonic horns. With a surge of absolute, uncompromising strength, Tal lifted the villain into the air and slammed him down into the concrete floor, shattering the control console beneath them and permanently short-circuiting the Oblivion engine. King Hel gasped, the light in his eyes flickering out as Tal's fist struck him one final time, knocking the demon into deep unconsciousness. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of Tal's ragged breathing. Eden ran into the room, her hair tangled with leaves, and threw her arms around him. He held her tight, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. In the days that followed, President Ross addressed the nation, revealing the truth about Sullivan's betrayal, King Hel's manipulation, and the heroism of the superhuman society. The public apology was broadcast worldwide. The hate faded, replaced by a profound, collective gratitude. Tal stood on the roof of his apartment building, looking out over the city as the sun began to rise. His alarm clock was broken, but for the first time in his life, he didn't care about the time. The world wasn't perfect, and it still had a long way to go. But as Eden stepped onto the roof beside him, a single white lily blooming between the gravel at her feet, Tal knew they had finally given the world a chance to try.